I decided to do my song analysis on Eminem's song Stan. Before I jump into the overall analysis of this song, though, I would like to start by giving you a brief biography on Eminem's life. Eminem, whose real name is Marshall Mathers, is an American rapper, record producer, and actor born on October 17th, 1972, in St. Joseph, Missouri. The rapper's early life was not ideal, spending much of it moving frequently between Missouri and Detroit, Michigan public housing projects due to his mom's inability to hold down a steady job for more than several months at a time. Eminem was extremely critical in the way his mother raised him, often bashing her prescription drug use and physical and mental abuse in his music. As a child, Eminem said that he would be forced to change schools 2 to 3 times a year and exclaimed that this was probably one of the roughest parts of his entire childhood. The constant change of schools left a large impact on the artist's personality and resulted in him having no close friends. He was known as an outcast at each new school he attended and was subject to bullying by his classmates. Eminem was fatherless from the day he was born, and although he made attempts to come in contact with his father did not reciprocate. The tough upbringing of Marshall Mathers had a great deal of influence on his music and is easily recognizable in many of his songs. Eminem attended Lincoln High School in Warren, Michigan, in which he failed the ninth grade 3 times before eventually dropping out of school at the age of 17. Despite the fact that Eminem was a poor student, he always had a very strong knack for English. The young rapper would often read countless numbers of comic books and even study the dictionary in order to expand his vocabulary for his rhymes. Eminem began to emerge himself in the Detroit rap scene during his teenage years and often competed in rap battles against other hip hop artists. One of the main controversies behind Eminem is the fact that he was participating in a music genre that was predominantly practiced by African Americans at the time. However, the rapper's skill led him to become one of the most well respected hip hop artists in Detroit's underground rap scene. Marshall Mathers released the Slim Shady LP in 1999, which caught the eye of notorious rapper and producer Dr. Dre, ultimately leading to the artist signing a deal with Interscope Records. The Slim Shady LP went on to sell over 3 million copies worldwide. The second studio album Eminem created, the Marshall Mathers LP, was released in the spring of 2000 and sold over 19 million copies. The album won the Grammy Award for Best Rap Album and is widely considered one of the greatest rap albums of all time. The rest is history. Now that we have discussed a brief overview of Eminem's life and how he got into the music industry, it is time to focus in on the song that I chose to analyze for this project. The song Stan is the third song featured on the Marshall Mathers LP and is 6 minutes and 44 seconds long. Stan is comprised of 4 different verses, all sung by Marshall Mathers, and has a hook that samples the song Thank You by British singer and songwriter Ditto. The musical genius behind this song is in the way that Eminem delivers and tells a heartbreaking and emotional story about a fan obsessed with Eminem through the eyes of the fan, who goes by the name of Stan. Marshall Mathers raps 3 of the 4 verses as if he is this emotionally unstable fan who has a startling obsession with Eminem, and then closes the song with the final verse from the perspective of Eminem. The song starts off with the hook performed by Ditto. You can hear rain and light percussion in the background of the song that stays constant throughout the entirety of the track, which helps portray the overall sad and gloomy feel to it. The lyrics that Ditto sings in the hook discuss the despair and hopelessness that a certain individual feels in the morning. The hook does not appear to be discussing Stan's own life, but does a good job at complementing the overall theme of the song. The hook goes as follows. My tea's gone cold, I'm wondering why I got out of bed at all. The morning rain clouds up my window and I can't see it all. And even if I could, it'll all be gray, but your picture on my wall, it reminds me that it's not so bad. The first time Ditto sings the hook, her voice is almost muzzled and slightly overpowered by the sound of the rainfall in the background. When the song hits the 25-second mark, however, the hook is repeated with the introduction of a bass guitar and stronger percussion. At this point in the song, Ditto's voice begins to become much clearer and pronounced, which draws less attention to the musical undertones and more attention to the lyrics being sung. At the 50-second mark, Eminem makes his first appearance in the track from the perspective of Stan. The verse starts out with the line, Dear Slim, I wrote you but you still ain't callin', and the beat introduces the sound of a pencil writing on a sheet of paper, which implies that Stan is communicating to Eminem via letter. What I found interesting about this part of the song is that Stan addresses Eminem as Slim as opposed to Eminem or Marshall Mathers. Slim Shady is a stage name that Eminem goes by that is an alter ego of himself, which he portrays on a multitude of his songs. He quoted in an interview that Slim Shady is the evil thoughts that come into his head and that it's the darker and more twisted side of him. When Stan addresses Marshall Mathers by Slim, it appears to me that Stan seems to identify more with this evil side of the rapper. Slim Shady is a made-up character that Eminem utilizes in order to produce more sadistic tracks than he would if he was rapping as Eminem. Stan may believe that this is who Eminem really is, when in actuality, it's an artistic technique that the rapper uses. When you hit the 55-second mark in the song, Stan goes on to discuss how he left his contact information at the bottom of the letter and has written 2 previous letters to Eminem in which he received no response. Stan undermines the fact that he received no response from Eminem by convincing himself that there must have been a problem at the post office or something that hindered the delivery of his letters to the rapper. In the eyes of Stan, Eminem is his hero, and the only explanation for why the rapper didn't get back to him had to be because of other reasons other than Eminem not taking the time to send him a response. Throughout the duration of the first verse, you can get a sense of the loneliness that must be haunting Stan. He's looking for a way to get through to Eminem on a more emotional level, such as when he asks him how his daughter's doing and relates it back to how his girlfriend is pregnant and he too is about to be a father. Stan also begins to reveal his stalker-like tendencies around the 113 mark when he brings up reading about Eminem's Uncle Ronnie that committed suicide back in 1991. The rapper had no songs prior to this one that talked about his Uncle Ronnie, showing that Stan not only is a fan of Eminem's music, but also takes time to read into his personal life. Stan's obsession with Eminem is also highlighted when he explains that he's his biggest fan and goes on to discuss some of the underground work that the rapper has made that a typical fan probably would not be aware of. I found it a bit weird that Stan brought up some very serious matters about Eminem's personal life and then proceeded to follow up with how he's his #1 fan. I believe that this is a good way at showing Stan's instability and lack of social adeptness. Eminem is extremely creative in how he addresses his personal experiences through a fictional fan of his. The first verse is followed by the hook and then smoothly enters into the second verse, with Eminem still rapping from the perspective of his fan. The first line of the verse comes in at 2 minutes and 1 second with a similar tone to that of the first verse. Stan starts the verse off by saying, "Dear Slim, you still ain't called or wrote, I hope you have a chance," in a friendly manner, and then follows this line with, "I ain't mad, I just think it's fucked up you don't answer fans." At this point in the song, you begin to sense a bit of hostility and mood change on Stan's behalf. You can feel the frustration in Stan's voice building up throughout the entirety of this verse. Stan is taking Eminem not responding to him on more of a personal level and disregards the fact that Eminem probably receives thousands of letters of fan mail each day. What is quite interesting and original about Eminem's approach to this song is that by having Stan criticize Eminem throughout the track, the artist is indirectly addressing some of the problems that he recognizes in himself. At the 2 minute and 20 second mark, Stan goes on to tell Eminem that he's disappointed in him not signing an autograph for his little brother one time after a concert. "That's pretty shitty, man. You're like his fucking idol. He wants to be just like you, man. He likes you more than I do," are Stan's exact words. I interpreted this line to have a deeper meaning than what meets the eye. Little brothers typically idolize their older brothers and try their best to mimic them. Since Stan idolizes and identifies with Eminem on a very significant level, his little brother probably does the same because of Stan. It's not that his little brother idolizes Eminem, it's that he idolizes Stan. There seems to be a motif that shows up throughout the duration of this song. That being that Stan always relays the conversation back to how he wants Eminem to write to him. When you start to sense the anger and frustration in Stan's voice, he almost always follows up in a submissive manner. I believe much of this has to do with the fact that Stan is scared that if he goes off on Eminem too hard, then he risks turning Eminem away completely. As the second verse continues, there starts to become some foreshadowing of Stan's suicidal tendencies. At the 2 minute and 50 second mark in the song, Stan exclaims, "Sometimes I even cut myself to see how much it bleeds. It's like adrenaline. The pain is such a sudden rush for me." Eminem has talked about self-hurt in multiple songs of his, but explains that he doesn't actually cut himself. It's just something his fictional alter ego, Slim Shady, raps about in songs. This is another example in the song that shows that Stan has a hard time identifying fiction from reality. Stan is trying to connect with Eminem on a personal level by addressing both their self-harm tendencies. However, Stan is actually identifying with Slim Shady, not Eminem. Stan cannot grasp the fact that Eminem is an artist and much of his music is for the entertainment of others and may not necessarily reflect the actual actions of Eminem. The beauty behind this is that by writing this song from the perspective of one of his crazed fans, Eminem is aware of the fact that he can create music that hits people on an emotional and personal level. The third verse is the climax of the track. The first thing you notice when Eminem starts to rap at the 3 minute and 37-second mark is that the pencil writing on paper is not incorporated into the beat of this verse like it was for the previous two verses. Instead, Stan is communicating to Eminem through a cassette tape. You can also tell Stan is angry because he addresses Eminem as Mr. I'm too good to call or write my fans, and in the previous verses, he refers to him as Slim. At the 3 minute and 40-second mark, Stan says, "This will be the last package I ever send your ass." It is possible to interpret this line in two ways at this point in the song. The first way to interpret this would be to assume that Stan is going to stop writing and reaching out to Eminem because he has not received a response. However, I think Eminem intended on adding this line to foreshadow the incidents that occur in the rest of this verse. Eminem raps this verse from Stan's perspective and exclaims that he is speeding down the freeway. At 3 minutes and 55 seconds, Stan says, "Hey Slim, I drank a fifth of vodka. You dare me to drive?" Which is a particularly interesting line for a couple of reasons. In Eminem's song My Name Is on his debut album, the Slim Shady LP, one of the lines he raps is, "Am I coming or going? I can barely decide. I just drank a fifth of vodka. Dare me to drive?" Eminem incorporated this line from My Name Is into his song Stan. However, when he uses it in the song Stan, it is being said from Stan's perspective in a mocking tone directed at Eminem. Stan is playing with Eminem's words from one of his other songs, which shows that Stan still shows obsessiveness towards the rapper even when speeding drunkenly down the freeway. One of Eminem's rapping techniques is to use contradictions in order to help portray insanity. At 4 minutes and 23 seconds, Eminem uses this technique by saying, "I hope you can't sleep and you dream about it," in reference to Eminem ruining his relationship with Stan. Stan is hoping that Eminem cannot sleep over losing his fan, but then also hopes that the rapper dreams about him. These two statements are contradictory of each other and help emphasize Stan's delusional tendencies. At 4 minutes and 31 seconds, you can start to hear the voice of a woman screaming in the background of the song in which Stan explains that it's his pregnant girlfriend tied up in the trunk. The first time listening to the song can be a bit shocking. It is more like listening to a devastating story as opposed to a song. The end of the third verse consists of Stan driving his car off a bridge into a river. You can hear the car skid off the road into the water around the 4 minute and 49-second mark. At this point, the song transitions back into the hook. The final verse of the song comes in at 5 minutes and 24 seconds, but this time instead of Eminem rapping from the perspective of Stan, he's rapping as himself. It's implied that Eminem is writing a letter to Stan because the pencil and paper are incorporated back into the beat and the verse starts off by Eminem saying, "Dear Stan." Eminem immediately addresses the fact that he intended on writing to Stan sooner, but was too busy to do so. At this time, Stan thought Eminem was ignoring him, but none of it was intentional. The problem here is that Stan was too emotionally unstable to realize this. Eminem addresses the things that Stan wrote to him in the previous letters he sent him. Eminem asks how Stan's girlfriend is doing with her pregnancy and also sends him an autograph for his little brother. You can get a sense that Eminem feels empathy towards Stan and really wants to help him out. Stan was under the impression that Eminem was as heartless and depressed as himself due to him associating Eminem's actual personality with his alter ego of Slim Shady. This verse reveals that Eminem is caring and empathetic, which would have probably been helpful to Stan if the letter reached him in time. At 6 minutes and 6 seconds, Eminem tells Stan that he hopes that he gets to read this letter before he ends up hurting himself. Eminem incorporates irony into this verse because the listeners of the song already know what happened to Stan. There's a great deal of artistic creativity behind this track because Eminem raps the majority of the song as if he is Stan, and then comes into the last verse rapping as himself, but with a naivety about what occurred during the previous 3 verses. The final verse is wrapped up by Eminem explaining to Stan that he doesn't want him to wind up like a news story he heard about a man who drove his car off a bridge with his pregnant wife in the trunk. It's at this point that Eminem realizes Stan was the man he saw on the news. The song ends abruptly with rain and thunder being the last thing playing on the track before it fades out. The way Eminem executed the ending for this song enables listeners to digest the heart-wrenching story they just listened to. This now concludes my song analysis of Stan by Eminem. Thank you.